Hello, welcome to ATX LED. This is a presentation about the use of the ZWD control software for the lighting that's in your house. If you go to me.atxled.com, you will then be redirected to this screen. And this is our demonstration room in Austin, Texas. And we're showing here, it's a small project with a number of lights and switches and fans. So what we're going to do today is we're going to go through the different screens. And this is the typical screen that if you want to turn, for example, the lights on and off, you can do it simply from this screen. The different light switches have a name that is invisible at the top of this page. And by clicking on that name, you can turn the lights that are attached to that switch on, off, and you can dim them. From other screens, we'll show you how to change the color temperature as well. ZWD is the control system for the lights in your house. Here we've turned the pendant lights on, and you can see that they're showing as yellow here at the top. The closet lights, we just turned those on. And we can also dim the lights by moving the slider that's below the light. So now we've dimmed the pendant lights, and now we've dimmed the closet lights. So these are just examples of the lights that we can control and turn off again. ZWD has a much more detailed information, and there's a lot of information here that the actual user does not really need, but I'm going to go through this anyway on a step-by-step basis to show you some of the details that are built into the system. Much of this information is used by the installer or during provisioning or during maintenance or debugging. You really don't need any of this information on this next section. If you like, you can skip ahead to where we discuss groups and scenes and so on. So here we're going to expand one of the switches. This is a switch controlling a group of lights we call the West Strip. You can see the model number of the wall switch. You can see the serial number, and the UPC code is all then shown here. This bus is a Dolly bus, and every switch has a address, and so the address of this switch is address 0. We can name the switches to give them useful names so that you can find them in this management mode. The public name is what would appear, for example, in Alexa or Google if you want to call it by a public name. The checkbox is for indicating if it's available from Alexa or Google, and we'll talk about that over in the groups in a moment. The groups are shown. We have a concept which is called tandem mode or virtual three-way switching, and the groups are used for that, and we'll discuss that later. We have the ability to control. I'm a big fan of dimming the lights or fading the lights in and out when you turn them on and off. So you can program the time it takes for the lights to fade up and the time it takes for them to fade back down again. So that is in the fade up and the fade down boxes. And you can select from anywhere between immediate 0 and 90 seconds for that fade time, and so we can change that. And you can do that either on a individual light basis, or you can do for all of them. The next group is we can set the minimum dim level, the maximum dim level, and the color temperature. So here you can see that we have right now, these lights are set to 5,000 degrees Kelvin. That's a cool temperature. That's why it's in the blue zone. But we can also slide that bar over to the left so that it is in warm color operation. Further down on the list, we have other things. Don't worry about the temperature range or the Dolly range. We can discuss that in more detail in another video. The CCT fade time. This is the idea that when you use a schedule to change the color temperature of the lights in the house, you can program the amount of time that it will take for that transition to occur. So for example, at sunset, you can wait, let's say 2 hours after sunset, and then move the lights to a warmer tone, which is more conducive to sleep. And so there's lots of studies about how warm light is better for sleeping, and cool light is better for daytime and working and so on. So you can program with the CCT fade time how much time. And that time can go anywhere from 10 seconds to 2,500 seconds, which is roughly about 45 minutes. And you'll see us actually go in and edit and change that just by typing in. So you can type into the boxes here on the screen. You would type in the changes, and those changes are then transmitted to the switch. So what you're actually looking at here is the control system, which is communicating with the wall switches. And so any changes you make here, these will be then sent to the wall switch, and then the wall switch will execute your wishes autonomously. This means that you can actually turn the control hub off. You can unplug the internet from it, and your lighting, your switches all still work. So you don't really need the internet in the system that we've designed. The notion of this warm and cool, this is called, we call this circadian rhythm, which is the human sensitivity to the light as a function of time of day. Further on in this video, we're going to talk about some of the other things. You can actually change those color temperatures using scenes, and that will allow you to change all the lights in the house. We also have macros that allow you to have dependencies, and you can write scripts and do all kinds of crazy stuff. So the LEDs, we have two kinds of operations. We have a fixed color operation, and we have the tunable white operation. And so the switch can be programmed to operate either, let's say, up to four color tuning lights, or 8 fixed color temperature lights. And so that's what the driver mode is about. So that's the driver mode. In this case, we have tunable white, otherwise known as CCT. CCT is the abbreviation for color tuning. The N-way setting, you see where it says 3-way. Our switches have the ability for multiple, very low-cost remote switches to turn the lights on and off and dim them. And that's the 3-way mode. The N-way input, that is something that the electrician would have wired into the installation, and it then shows the different N-way modes include 3-way switching, include the fan control, and other modes. I forgot to mention earlier that at the top you see that green bar and the slider. So that's the on-off status for the light. Now we're going to go over and talk about other, we call it other DALI. So DALI is the name of the bus that's used, and your switches are devices on this bus. And the DALI bus can have up to 64 devices. We offer a multi-button switch. In this case, this switch is called the Fourier 3B, the 3-button switch that's installed in the foyer of this project. And we have 3 buttons that we can program for different things. And in this case, we've programmed the switches to be, the top one is for the lights to be a cool temperature using scene 1. And then the second button is scene 0 for the warm temperature. And the bottom button is actually set for a virtual mode. So I'm going to name that address 63 as a virtual address, and we'll explain how that is then used in a little bit later. So now we've named this as Virtual 63, and we're also naming this other reference to it as Virtual 63. And this name you're going to see will then pop up in a later screen. So we've got now this, the next step is configuring the groups. I mentioned earlier about these three-way switches using a group mode for a virtual three-way. Virtual three-way is when you have multiple doors in a large room, and you can program the switches on multiple doors to all work together in unison. So we've now, for example, we've grouped these virtual group 0, we've grouped these switches together into a group. So the west strip and the east strip are controlled by independent wall switches on opposite sides of the room. And you can color tune and change the brightness from anywhere in the room. So that's other group settings can be set from that page. Now we're talking about the scenes. Here we're basically showing you that in this setup we have 4 scenes that are stored. The top scene is warm on, so scene 0 is setting the lights to a warm temperature and not so bright. The scene 1 is setting them to a cool temperature and bright. And scene 2 is turning them all off. And scene 3 is setting them to half bright. Now in the scene warm on, you can see all of the switches in the project, and they can either be members of the scene or they can be excluded from the scene. The checkbox means that they're members of the scene. If we uncheck the box, then we can change either brightness or color temperature or neither as part of the scene. So it means that if you have a living room and you have a scene there, but you don't want to change the lights in the bedroom, you would exclude the bedrooms from the scene by using the checkbox. Here you can see in this scene that everything is set to the warm temperature, 27K, and the other ones are set to different brightnesses. The next feature is schedules, and here we have 4 different schedules that are programmed. And so when you expand one of these, you're going to see the details of that scene. And it's pretty well explained in clear text. So here we have, for example, the warm, so sunset in this case, plus 30 minutes after sunset. Every day of the week, we're going to change the lights to the warm tone. And we're also going to turn off the pendant lights. It's just fun. You can make any sort of combination you want. And this schedule will then be executed every day, 30 minutes after sunset. We have other scenes. So here's the cool scene, which is programmed for 9:30 in the morning. Every morning at 9:30, we shift all the lights that are on in the house to warm temperature. The ones that are off will also be set to to the cool temperature, but we're not going to change the brightness. We're only going to change their color temperature. So if you turn the light on, it will be it'll be the cool temperature when you turn it on. At late night, here's a little fun little script. At midnight, we're going to turn all the lights off, except for the pendant lights. We're going to turn them on, and that's, you can make as many complicated commands as you want. So this gives you the ability to very simply create these schedules. Another schedule that we made is to turn the fans on at 4 o'clock in the morning. We're going to turn the fans on for 20 minutes or so that we can bring in some fresh air. This is a conference room, and so we're going to bring in cooler night air into the conference room. The sequences you can add. The plus sign allows you to add a command. The minus sign lets you delete it again. So this is how anyone can quickly and easily edit these commands. We're going to go down and we're going to basically we're going to change a value down here on the fans, the fan timing, and the operation. Our fans actually are designed to turn themselves off, so they're designed to self-time out. That means when you turn the fan on in a bathroom, I'm talking about exhaust fans here. When you turn the exhaust fan on in the bathroom and you walk away, it will turn itself off after a defined interval. So we have these exhaust fans, and we're able to change the timing on these fans. The idea of this video is that you can actually go backwards and forwards and look at this at your leisure. Just zoom back and forth. There's a lot of information, of course, here. We're going to move ahead here to the next page of our display is something called macros. Macros are basically scripts that you can write that can execute commands. We support a Z-Wave handheld remote. It's from a company called Jasco, and we can program the system to accept button presses on this little remote, and can have those button presses do whatever we want to do. In this case, for example, the top button can be programmed to set the lights to a certain color temperature or brightness or whatever, and then we can program the bottom button to also do that. So these are commands, and we call them macros, which is very similar to what you have in other things. So if you notice here, the virtual 63 comes up. So back in our multi-button wall switch, we assigned one of the buttons to be virtual 63. So that virtual 63 is then used here as a macro, which means that when I press that button, for example, when I leave the demo showroom, the lights will all turn off, and the outside lights will turn on and stay on for a minute, so I can walk away and when the sun is down. The hue features, we're going to have a separate video that's going to discuss how we work with the cloud, using either the hue emulation or our own native skills that are then communicating with Alexa and Google. This page here is an advanced page, one of the two advanced pages. This is showing the administration page. On the admin page, we have the software version number at the top. We have the identification of the hardware. We have the local IP address. We have the MAC address. We're going to ask you for the MAC address if you call us for tech support. So this is where you find the MAC address. The IP address is automatically generated, and you reference that when you enter the me.atxled.com as the URL. You type in that me.atxled.com, and it redirects you to the entire system. Here are links to the support pages, and frequently asked questions and so on. Back on the admin page for a moment, wanted to explain that we also have something called dataplicity, which is used for remote access. So if you want to grant a technician remote access to the system to handle any questions, then you can install dataplicity, or then you can uninstall it. The site name is simply, it helped to know what it is. The email address is for registration, and we'll be using that also in the cloud access. The provisioning is only done by the installer electrician, so we're not really going to worry about that right now. The cloud updating is something that if you opt in for that, then it helps us get information for any questions you might have about the system. It keeps about 3 months of data that shows the history of any changes, and also can document the energy consumption can be documented with that system. On the tool side, there's updating of the server software. Normally you don't have to worry about that, but sometimes we like to update. Restore backup, we can actually maintain a backup of all the names of all the devices and the configurations and the schedules and the macros, and restore that from the cloud if needed. After shipping it around the US, maybe we're in a different time zone and a different location for sunrise and sunset. So the time zone info can automatically set the time zone. Pulse lights, that's used to identify that all of your switches are connected. And as I mentioned, the heartbeat is where we send at a programmable interval, let's say every 5 or 10 minutes, can send the existing status of how many watts are consumed and so on. That's only for diagnostic information if you want to have that. On the power page, we're showing the voltages on the different parts of the system, and showing what's connected and what's not, and what the voltage is, and so on. So that's what we're doing here, is showing the different voltages. What's My Usage is a tool that can show you how much energy is being consumed by the lighting in the house. So this is showing the uptime, the number of hours since the last time that the power was cut in the house, and the on time, which how much time each of these wall switches was turned on, and during that time, how many kilowatt hours of energy was consumed, the average power, the maximum power, and what we call effective dim, which is basically, to what percentage when the lights are on, to what percentage do you dim the lights. And so the other tool we have here is called device topology. And we're going to scan, in this case we have 17 switches. We're going to scan all these switches, and we're going to display for each switch the number of lights that are attached. We have CCT, means color tuning LEDs. So some of our lights in this project are color tuning. And some of them, for example, are E26 bulbs, our screw-in bulbs. Those are not color tuning, and so we're showing the number of attached of these lights on the wall switch. And the wall switch has a left and a right output. We combine those two outputs together for the color tuning, but they can also be used individually for the fixed lighting configuration. You can also see which of the switches are connected to a fan on this page, and you have the names, the short address, and the model number for each. So this gives us really a lot of information that we use together with the electrician during install, and then afterwards you really don't have to look at this anymore, but it is useful in case there's any problem sometime in the future. The technician can look at that and get a lot of data. I mentioned before, about the tech support page. Lots of questions, including links to this video and other video, and also a link to all the data sheets for the product. The Wi-Fi network control, this is used if you decide to change your home network. So the name of the network is shown, the strength of the signal, and then the name of other networks that are nearby. You can select a name, and then you can enter the password for that, and then you can change the device to a different network. You can also delete and remove other networks that you may not want to use anymore. So you can remove them from the storage. And the priority, by the way, on the Wi-Fi networks is going to be the one you selected most recently will be the highest priority. This is the page of the logs for the device. So we're showing a lot of information about all of the transactions on the bus. This scrolls away after about 36 hours. So we're showing the last transactions of information on the bus. If we need to know the transactions for, let's say, switch number 16, we can filter and look only at switch number 16. So that's a really quick way to see what's going on with the different switches on the bus. The advanced page is then useful to show an overview of the switches. Again, we have a total of 64 switches possible, so we have a little 8x8 matrix, green indicating that there is a switch assigned to that address, and a tooltip that we can use to indicate what device is actually at that address. For example, we can change an address. So we can take, let's say, an address like number 28, and we can move it to, let's say, address 36. And this is, again, used by the installer. By highlighting an address, we can turn that individual address off, make it maximum brightness, minimum brightness, and we can set a percentage. This is all really very much in detail for let's say diagnostic information. Really isn't used by the average user. We can set all by going to the broadcast mode, clicking on the broadcast button. We can send commands that will make all the lights in the house operate at, for example, I can set the fade level so that they're all the same. I can set the color tuning transition time for all the lights to be the same. And so here you see I'm setting the fade up to 2 seconds and the fade down to let's say 2.8. And now all the lights in the project will have the same number. So for example, if you decide that you want all the switches to be 45 minutes for fade, then you would enter 2,500 into the CCT fade time. We have other information on the page, which is some data about the Dolly bus. Again, that's used really by the technician. I mentioned earlier about the Z-Wave switches, and this is the page to configure the Z-Wave switches. So this has been an introduction into all of those tabs on the ZWD system, and we want to thank you for watching. I know this was very fast, very detailed, but I'm sure you'll be able to learn about it at your own speed using the rewind button. Have a great day, and thanks very much.